Hi, hello, welcome. Hold on, I'm just double checking that we have sound. I think we're good. All right. Hello, welcome. Happy Sunday. Got some doodles here that might be references for today's work. Maybe not. We don't know. Just a reminder, if you're tuning in later, not live, if you're watching the replay of this, feel free to jump forward because the first half an hour I'm usually just setting up what I'm going to do, talking through my process, yada, yada, yada. So if you want to see action, feel free to skip ahead. I usually sculpt for about 2 hours. Today, trying to take it easy because it's been a stressful week. So I'm just going to sculpt something fun for some stress relief. Here on the screen, huge in front of you, is my big gooey tub of monster clay. This is the hard version. It comes in soft, medium, and hard. I bought the hardest one they make because I'm used to sculpting in wax, which is kind of like this in the sense that it is warm. It is squishy when it's warm, and it is very hard when it is cold. So I wanted to stick with what I know. So I bought the hard one. It's very squishy. It's been in the oven for about an hour. You can see me bending the stuff here. It's very squishy, but also borderline dangerous. If you take it right out of the oven, you have to be careful because it can actually burn you. There's like some liquid magma hiding down in there. So don't just like dig in there after you take it out of the oven or you're in trouble. Anywho, what are we going to make today? I don't actually know. I've got my tea, my cup of green tea that I grossly oversteeped because I forget about everything immediately. And I brought some foil this time because I'm thinking about making something a little bigger and I don't necessarily want to use a bunch of clay. So I might make a little internal structure out of foil first, which is something a lot of sculptors do. It's called an armature. A lot of the time, something really, really big, you'd have a much firmer armature made of steel or whatever. The little stuff like this saves on materials. You don't have to use as much clay because your core is essentially just balled up foil. So, with that said, let's get some foil out. Just see where it goes. The only problem with, sorry, noisy. All right. Well, the only problem with armatures is that you can't change your mind about your armature. Once you start putting clay on top of it, you can't move it very much. It's in the way. So if you decide you want to cut somewhere where there's a piece of foil, you're out of luck. That's why I would say you don't get too crazy. Make sure you're prepared to put a good amount of clay on top of it because you don't want this too close to the surface because it's going to impede on your ability to sculpt the thing that you're trying to sculpt. I am going to make this just whatever shape comes into my brain right now and just see what we're thinking. Okay. Kind of looks like a peacock a little bit, or like a, I don't know, Nessie? Not sure. I don't know where we're going with that. But I had sort of had it in my mind that I wanted to make a little dragon today. I probably should be doing something more, I don't know. Actually, I don't know what I should be doing. I guess the answer is I should be doing whatever I want to do. And in that case, sculpting a little dragon is the way to do it. If you've been with me from the beginning of these live streams, I actually did start sculpting a larger dragon a long time ago. That was like a bunch of little pieces, and they were supposed to be like engineered to fit together and also be movable. And I guess, sorry, pardon me for reaching. I think what happened, I lost steam on that project because kind of right as I was starting to work on that, there was an influx of those crappy 3D printed articulating dragons, and they were everywhere, and they were like, everyone was complaining that like Ren fairs were overwhelmed with these like crappy plastic 3D printed movable dragons, and I was like, darn it, I was trying to make a cool one from scratch, which at some point I'll probably revisit it, but it kind of like left a weird bad taste in my mouth that like it would be perceived poorly because of all these like, you know, crappy 3D printed ones that obviously would have taken, 4 seconds compared to the probably 6 months it would have taken me to make mine. So they're really not the same. But I definitely, I just wasn't vibing with it. So now I'm thinking about more like one solid piece, like a little statue that you can just admire. Because I'm enjoying making larger things again now that I have discovered monster clay and it's all its gorgeous capabilities. So I'm thinking sculpture's on the brain. And right now, lighting my lamp so that I have a hot tool to work with. Right now we're kind of in the middle of a move. We were supposed to move last year. We're supposed to move the year before last. So like the last couple of years have been a hot mess of not being able to do what I want to do. I'm currently in my extra bedroom that has essentially nothing in it because we moved almost everything out of it. It's really not an ideal location for making big sculptures, so for the time being, I will be making little things that I can make at the top of my desk without, burning my house down or any of the things that come along with making large scale sculptures. That's going to be saved for when I have a studio that is in an outbuilding, not in my spare bedroom of my house where I live. So for now, we are in the spare bedroom doing our thing. Today, we're just gonna like see where it takes me. I sculpted a little dragon sitting like hunched over drinking tea, kind of like the way I drink my tea every day, like this. And I thought he was so cute. And he just kind of popped into my brain, and I think that is where we're gonna try to go with this. So let's do it. Let's make it happen. Oh yeah, I oversteeped this. It is a little bitter. I assume it's still good for me. Right? Green tea is still good for you even if you grossly oversteep it. Okay. Anyways, I'm gonna move this out of the frame. My tea also out of the frame. Move this here so you can see it. And now I'm just gonna dig into this. Get my scrunchie out of the way so I don't light that on fire. Here we have our gooey goodness. See how nice and soft that is? It looks like chocolate. Good stuff. All right. So I'm just gonna I'm using a butter knife because like that's my favorite thing to use for like quick large amounts of clay. All right. So now we have a chunk. I'll put my little foil topper back on it to keep it warm over here off to the side. But we have our little foil thing. Look how beautiful and squishy this clay is. Oh my gosh, just the best. Anyways, all right, so I'm gonna jam the clay around the foil. And this stuff gets hard like crazy fast. So I'm just gonna give the shape that I generally want. And then I'm gonna let it harden up a tiny bit, which will happen like in seconds. It's probably the only downside of this clay is that you have to keep it hot, like actively keep it hot in a way that is kind of, I would say, difficult to achieve. I have seen some people that keep like a warming oven sort of thing with like just sheets of this clay in it. And that seems like probably a genius idea. Well, I just dug into a very squishy, squishy part here. That is, see that? Borderline too squishy. That will probably burn me if I touch it, so I'm gonna leave that alone. And go over here where it's a little less squishy. A little less dangerous. Again, heed my warning with monster clay if you heat it in the oven. Okay? Please don't get burned because of me. Alright. So, this is our little dragon. I wanted this guy to kind of sit. Like, he's got a little crooked kind of spine. And you know what I think inspired me with this is I was watching Jungle Book yesterday, and Ka, I believe his name is Ka, the snake, had like his bendy movements. He was so personified in such an interesting way. I definitely like didn't appreciate it as a child. You know, like how well the animators conveyed like human-like traits to a snake, like bending arms and neck and things like that. Snakes don't really do because they're snakes. They don't have arms or legs, but he did a really darn good job, I have to say. But it made me think about like reptiles with like lanky, bendy limbs. So I kind of was thinking about that for like a skinny little goofball of a dragon. Also, I watched Mulan recently. I watch a lot of Disney movies while I'm sculpting. That obviously that old school style of animation is where I draw some inspiration once in a while for creatures and characters because classic Disney animation with some good stuff. All right. So here, this is obviously bendy head and neck. I wanted to give him, he almost kind of has like a ferret-like vibe. Oops, some of my foil is poking out his rear end over here, but not going to be a problem because this is where his foot is going to go. Feet, foot, feet. Oops. Oof. I'm going to be careful not to give myself a horrid backache today because I did the last live stream. I gave myself like the mother of all backaches. I was like, why have I done this? Why? So I want this dude to sit on his own, obviously. I originally did a doodle, doodle, doodly doo. I did a doodle of him sitting like against a rock, and then I was like, he'd be cuter though if he just sat on his own. Because then you could like in theory put him anywhere. He could sit on his desk, on your desk, and like stare at you and be all cute. I'm gonna move his tail, I think. Here we go. I'm probably like, what on earth is she doing? It still looks like an otter. He's got a very otter-like vibe going on here. But that's gonna be his other foot. Another thing about Monster Clay, if you're thinking about trying it is suited, this type of clay, specifically the harder one, I would say is more suited towards people like me that work really, really fast. Obviously, I work slower later when I start putting the details in, but when I'm doing preliminary stuff, I'm like ripping through because that's just how I work. And it works for me because it stays soft it gets actively harder by the moment, which works for me because I work so fast. But if you work really slow, this might infuriate you, to be totally honest. But maybe not. I would say try it. It's one of those things that you just gotta try. You don't know unless you try. I can't believe it took me this long to try monster clay. I've been hearing about it and reading about it all over the internet for probably years, literal years. And I'm like, nah. It was always marketed as like a special effects clay, like people who use it, obviously monster clay for like studios that make monsters, prosthetics and masks and horror movies and stuff like that. So I just like, I don't know, I guess my brain just like did not make the connection that I also sculpt monsters, just little ones. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. But, all right, here we have beep beep beep. I moved his tail over, gave him some legs. Though he currently does not sit on his own, so I guess I have to move his tail more. Because when he's bronze, he's going to be a hell of a lot heavier. And the thing about bronze is it'll just flop. It'll just plop over and ruin your day. Ruin my day, at least. Okay. Move his tail a little bit. It's still soft enough for me to do most of my work with my hands, but I do have this little guy and my torch for if I need to get in there deep without mushing up too much everything else around it with my fingers. But a lot of this I leave to the hardening of the clay, which is an important. I'm gonna turn his little feet in and make him like a nerd, nerdy. Okay, so I almost feel like I should zoom out a tiny bit so you have a better scope of what I'm doing. Back's starting to hurt. Oh no, I keep forgetting about my tea. Okay, so before I give him arms, I feel like I need to do more shaping of the body because if I put arms on now, they're just going to be in the way. So this is where the quick shaving and sculpting kind of comes in. You can see the clay is getting a little harder. I want to give him a little belly, so I'm gonna leave kind of like a little pouch, a little lower belly pouch, make him look like he's slouching in this little relaxed posture. So there's a little pouch. I was gonna also put some music on today, but it is pretty dang hard trying to find unlicensed music to listen to that is actually like enjoyable. The majority of it is like, I don't know if you know what lo-fi is, but boring. Which is fine. Boring is fine for background music, but it's a bummer that I can't just like put on the Rolling Stones and just like vibe because of copyright infringement. It's kind of a bummer. But yeah. So we're just gonna sit here in silence, which is not really my favorite thing because now I feel like I have to talk the entire time and I also hate doing that. At some point, I'm gonna try to find a unlicensed music stream of some sort so that I can put on some chill vibes while I sculpt. But if you want to hear me go on and on, you can. And if you don't want to hear me go on and on, also feel free to mute mute my video. I won't be offended if you mute me. Okay. I think we're gonna give him like really big feet because that sounds adorable, right? Right now I'm just giving him, these are his little knees. There's one of his little knees. I feel like I see a lot of dragon sculptures and like they're all amazing, and I think people go like they go so hard on the details. Um, but I don't see a lot that really like speak to me like in a personality kind of way. Like I want a dragon that looks like he's got something going on that I want to know about. You know what I mean? He's got hobbies or you know, maybe he also likes tea. I don't know. But I think the main dragons that you see out in the world are usually very like high fantasy, scary, um, or they're like really, really cute. Really, really cute. I want to strike a balance here between um, scary and really cute. So we're going to try to do that today. This was not the plan, but you know what? I never have a plan. It's fine. Plans are for, I don't know, neurotypicals. We ain't got none of that in this household. If you're looking for neurotypical, you're in the wrong place. Okay. I also feel like I should say hi to my entire family because ever since I made these live, the live stream is public. People are like, "Oh, I've been watching you on YouTube," and I'm like, "Oh no, I forgot that you can do that." Um, which is fine. It's lovely that you guys are watching me. I just totally did not expect anyone really to be watching me from my immediate family group. I assume it's usually just strangers watching me, which sounds like it would be scarier, but it's not. Um, so, hello, nieces and nephews. I'm gonna try really hard not to swear today because you guys are probably gonna see this. Um, William, Maria, JJ, Elsie, even Mikey. Mikey's a baby, but you never know. Got a lot of nephews. Nephew heavy. We'll see if any of them decide to become artists like their Aunt Rocks. We'll see. Maybe I will inspire them by being their cool aunt that makes YouTube videos. Very possible. We don't have a whole lot in common with children these days, but other than liking to play, I like to play. I'm very childlike in that way. Give me like a fun game or like a puzzle or something, and I'm into it. Let's go. I could spend all day doing a puzzle. Um, Obviously, you see me now just getting really, really obsessed with sculpting fantasy creatures. It's my literal job. I turned it into my own job, which, you know, some people are probably like, what is she doing? But joke's on you, I'm having a great time. You wish you got to spend your days sculpting fantasy creatures to some strangers on the internet. Though I'm sure that those of you who are watching me, hello. I see that neither of you are in the chat, but I highly doubt you are strangers. You're probably some of my favorite people, internet people. Because because I have a couple of regulars that like to watch me work, which I think is lovely, and I am glad that you guys are here. I'm definitely trying to get my YouTube presence a little more established. It ain't easy. Um, you gotta try way harder on YouTube. You gotta make longer videos. And you're probably thinking, well, these videos go on and on forever. Yes, they do. This is true. But most people do not want to see an unedited 2.5 hour long unedited video. That is not what the algorithm is liking. Definitely not. Oops. I gotta make sure I remember to keep sitting him down because he is still squishy. So look at his giant feet. He is still squishy. So if I hold on to him for too long and I'm like crushing him because I'm not paying attention, his posture will change a tiny bit. So you want to make sure we don't squish. His feet and legs. Got distracted there for 1 second. Feet and legs I'm going to rough in. I'm not going to get real detailed because I tend to change my mind a lot with posture, and until he has all his limbs, I can't really tell you for sure if they're going to stay in this position or not. They might not. Also, his tail's kind of in the way. I'm going to shave some of that off. Maybe put it on this side because it's a little lopsided. Oops. But the tail situation is a hello from Philly. Hi. Hi from New York. Fun fact, I used to live right outside of Philly years ago. It's a cool city. Some good art. Some really good art museums in Philly. We went there for 4th of July a few years ago. Hell of a party. It was like 95 degrees. I feel like, I forget who was performing, but there was like some huge party. I lived right on the edge of Delaware, the border of Delaware and PA. So, like, I forget what town it was. Bear? So, not right on the border, but close. We were pretty close. We went to Philly for a lot of stuff. I lived in Newark, Delaware for a little while. It was a rough time by the airport. I don't know if there was an airport near me. You mean the Philly airport? I did go to the Philly airport a couple times and had some of the most traumatic flights of my life out of Philly's airport. So I remember that well. I don't remember quite how far away I lived from the airport. It's been a long time. It was like 12, 13 years ago. I have blocked a lot of that out of my mind, to be totally fair. I feel like I can hear myself talking, and I think my husband is listening to my video, and I think it is hearing it from the other room. It's confusing me, throwing me for a loop. I have superhuman hearing. No, Philly was not a good experience at all. I was in like a bunch of car accidents when I lived down there because the traffic is bonkers. And I'm still dealing with those injuries, car accident injuries today as a sculptor sitting at my desk. The whiplash is still very real, even though it was happened 13 years ago or whatever. But yeah, the general chaos of the area was not fun. I didn't love it. close to the cities. Baltimore is cool. We could like train ride um, to Baltimore pretty easily, which was cool. But driving anywhere, no, thank you. I'm scarred for life. I'm absolutely scarred for life. I don't do a lot of driving anymore. The highway driving situation out there was gnarly. Driving from that area to upstate New York for holidays and stuff was bonkers. But I did it when I was young and lively. It was, I kind of just blocked it out and did it because I had to, but I had a cool job down there and it was fun for a little bit, and then I got sick of it and was like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm gonna go back to the quiet piece of upstate New York, which we currently don't live in like the most quiet, peaceful area, but working on it. The move that I keep referencing will we will eventually be somewhere very quiet. It's gonna be lovely. I'm gonna be doing so much more sculpting when we move. Right now I'm limited to like little dudes, like this guy, who has like the tiniest, funniest, tiniest little legs. So I think I have to trim down his body here to make his legs a little bit more proportionate. You know what I mean? Your family's from Rochester and Jamestown. Lived in Rochester and Jamestown. My husband went to college in Rochester and lived there for um, quite a few years. He's a big Rochester boy. I've only been there a couple times. I went there once to visit him, and I was like, I think we've gone since then, maybe like twice. Food is good. Great food. It's kind of a bigger city, upstate-ish city. But there's a lot of really nice places in the surrounding areas. We have a lot of like the gorges in Ithaca, natural wonder kind of things. Out that direction, a lot of wine country, which isn't anything I'm super into, but people like it. I guess. I don't know. I've never been big on wine, but I get the appeal driving through the countryside and checking out the vineyards and stuff. Great Lake kind of area. All right. Husband is cooking something downstairs and it smells so good. Tree ring. May want a wasp? When you say a wasp, what do you mean? Like a ring with a wasp on it? I just sculpted another honeybee a couple days ago. Not on a ring. I do have a honeybee ring, but I have not sculpted a wasp. I'm actually horrified of wasps in real life, for being honest. I feel like I might have addressed this at some point in another live stream. Because this time of year, I'm like especially horrified that they're gonna come out. Same style as the tree. When you say the tree, do you mean the like a shadow box, the little like oval? It's kind of like an oval face, and then the trees that are sculpted in the background, kind of. Because that's definitely doable if that's what you're talking about. I'm trying to think of what kind of tree. If I have more than one tree, I sculpt a lot of things. I forget. Yes. Okay. So yeah, that's the one I was thinking of. I'm like, have I made other trees? I'm sure I probably have. I forget about a ton of stuff. People are always quizzing me. They're like, have you ever made a blah blah blah? And I'm like, I don't know, maybe. um, I sculpt really, really fast, and I also have a very, very short memory. So, but yeah, that style, I could probably do a wasp on that. Can I ask why you want a wasp? Do you like wasps? Is it a fear thing, facing your fears? um, I ask because I am absolutely mortified of wasps. Not all bees, literally just wasps, paper wasps specifically. Mud wasps, those guys are like, they're okay. I don't mind them that much. Put me in a room with a paper wasp and watch me completely lose my mind. I don't know what it is. Well, I mean, I do. I know exactly what it is. It's childhood trauma. I was stung like 100 times by paper wasps when I was young, and it ruined me. I've never recovered. Really? Interesting. So, with that said, with the wasps being a protector, the fact that they are always attacking me, what's your interpretation of that? Because I swear to God, you can ask anyone in my family, also my husband, like, if I'm outside, they find me. Like, they'll get caught in my hair, they'll dive bomb me, like, hit me in the face. I'm not actively trying to engage with them at all, and they're, like, coming after me all the time. Um, they just don't leave me in peace. I'm trying so hard to keep, like, just stay away from them, and they always find me. And, yeah, they used to be like, I just got stung by them so much when I was young that they kind of seem problematic to me. If they minded their own business, we wouldn't have such a problem. But they tend to not mind their own business. They're always all up in my whole space all the time. They're protecting something or someone from you. Well, if they're protecting me, then I like the sound of that. That will make me feel better the next time they are swarming around my face. um, I typically leave them be. I'm not like I don't actively try to attract them to my space because I'm very afraid of them, but I also like respect them and leave them to their business. I just wish it was not near me. And also that they didn't so readily sting. They always, I mean, when I was a kid, obviously, like, I stepped on a fair number of them. I had many. They were always in my room, like in my bed, like on my bed, and I would sit on them or lay down on them. I know, horrible, horrible memories being brought up here. But they like lived in my house. My family lived in like open wall kind of old old house, and they were like living in the walls, and they were everywhere. Oh my gosh. But now I don't have that problem now, thank God. Thank God. But I do wish sometimes that I could like get some therapy or something. Then I would no longer be so afraid of them because it's an actual debilitating fear. Like, truly. Hmm. Control over your life circumstances. So I have no control over my life circumstances, or I have a lot of control over them. I wonder what the interpretation would be. It's probably that I have no control. Let's be real. That sounds more realistic. I tend to be fascinated with bees in general. I wish I wasn't afraid of wasps because other bees, like honeybees and bumblebees, I think are like just the cutest little guys. They're so cute. My family has bees. My dad is, I don't know if you could call him a beekeeper necessarily, but kinda. Um, he's got a bunch of bees and he keeps them. And I don't mind them at all. They can be like right up in my face and I'm totally fine with them. But there's something about that like buzz, the paper wasp buzz in a way that like other bees don't. And it's like really menacing. I don't know. I think it's just my trauma that makes it feel so menacing, but like if I hear their wings, even from like I don't know, I can be very far away and I can immediately identify the sound and I'm like I'm just struck with fear immediately. My dad still to this day has to rescue me from them every time they're in the shop. I'm like, oh my god, Dad, there's a bee. There's a wasp. Why? Why is he here? Get him out of here. But maybe I will frame it differently now that I know that that a bunch of other cultures find them to be their presence to be meaningful in a good way, not a bad way. All right, back to what I'm doing. What am I sculpting? I will tell you. What I'm doing is I'm sculpting currently a funky little dragon. I'm working on just shaping his body right now before I put his other arms on. So yeah, we're just trying to get like a generalized shape. Ow. But he's gonna be kind of a goofy looking little guy. He's got kind of a wonky, skinny wonky neck. I had I doodled a little dragon, a silly looking little dragon, drinking a cup of tea this morning and was kind of inspired to like make a little sculpture based on that. So will this be cast later on? Yes, that is the plan. If he is up to my standards, if I like him, if other people like him, yeah, I will. I intend on sculpting most of these things. I mean, casting. Most of the stuff I've been sculpting lately with monster clay. I'm trying to design it in a way that they won't be impossible to mold and cast. In the past, I have been really bad about sculpting things that are virtually impossible to cast without just the mother of all headaches. So I'm trying to be kinder to myself and sculpt some things that aren't going to be a massive pain in my ass. Excuse my French. But let's give this guy some little arms here because I think it's time. But yes, the plan here would be to cast. So the question is here, what do we want his little arms to be doing? Should they just be like relaxing on his belly? Would that be adorable or what? Maybe we'll give him little belly, hands resting on his belly. Maybe one on his belly, one on his knee. Casting done outdoors. Good question. This guy, if he doesn't get much bigger than this, I can still technically cast him in my little studio where I make all of my jewelry. Because I cast my bronzes the same way I cast jewelry, which is unorthodox for bronze sculptures. Because I say that because most bronze sculptures, people make the molds around the specific sculpture, whereas in jewelry, the molds are made contained inside of a flask, a metal tube essentially. So the mold is always the same size going into the casting. I can still use those molds, those metal tubes, as long as my sculptures fit inside of them. So that is where my size limitations come in the future. Those tubes are only max about this big wide. And the amount of metal that I can pour with my metal furnace is also limited because I pour metal essentially in like a melting pot that looks kind of like a coffee carafe that just gets to be, that heats up to 2000 degrees, which is awesome, but also scary when there's a lot of metal involved. If I went any bigger than this guy, it probably would be smarter and safer to do outside with um, like a, it would have to be a completely different system, not jewelry casting like I currently do. It would be a smaller furnace that's probably powered by propane, and it would sit outside and be covered, and then you would have to reach inside of it essentially with giant metal tongs to pull the crucible and the metal out and then pour it manually, like you're tipping like a cauldron. That would be kind of more along the lines of how it would work if it were bigger. It's definitely a different process, and it's very difficult to to describe to people who haven't done it. I don't know you personally. Maybe you do know how to cast bronze. Maybe you have done that before, in which case you might know exactly what I'm talking about. I have never cast bronze outside. When I cast larger amounts of bronze in my past, we did it in a foundry at school. So that was a much more controlled environment than currently. Obviously, I had the help of more professional, my professors who knew what they were doing, and other adult people that knew safety precautions and whatnot. Now that I do this all by myself, I have to be a little more realistic with my casting potential. I could probably do a lot bigger stuff, but it is a little bit scary and dangerous with larger amounts of metal. Right now I pour small batches at a time when I do jewelry, so each one is probably only, max 2 ounces of metal at a time. And then I will pour, 6 or 7 batches back to back to back. So it's definitely different than, whereas like this guy he'd probably weigh like a pound, which is a lot. Roughly 16 times what I normally pour per flask. So that's some perspective for you, I guess. Hammering metal, gotcha. So more fabrication is what you are familiar with, which is also very cool. I would say much more labor intensive for sure. You have to work way harder and, be way stronger too. I only did very, very minimal fabrication in college because I found it to be very, very exhausting. The stuff that you can make is very cool though. I will agree. It is fun. You could make like swords and stuff like that. Painful. Painful is the right word. Metalworking has, there's a lot of elements of it that can be painful, for sure. And welding and stuff like that can be a different type of scary and dangerous and painful if you're not careful. I was never great at welding steel. Every time we did that kind of stuff in college, I was like, this is so hard. The friends of mine I had that were good at welding steel, I was very impressed because I thought it was so scary. The amount of fire it spits at you. Like, no thanks. I'm good at welding a couple of other materials, but not the high temp stuff like steel. Never got good at that. My older sister actually was much better at welding. She did a lot of steel stuff. She hasn't done that in a long time. It's not really her vibe anymore, but back in the day. All right, we have a little arm. Let's see. Gotta crack my back a little bit. Casting, you'd be most concerned with the fumes. Yes, yeah, casting is the fumes from the burnout are particularly atrocious. So when you're burning out the wax to get ready for the casting, those fumes are pretty intense. I have a ventilation system, of course, and it's still not without flaw, for sure. You can smell chemicals in my house when the burnout is is at max temperatures in my house, and that's another reason we're moving because I want to keep that stuff out of my house for health purposes. Got to start casting in a different building than in the house that I live in. I'm acutely aware that it's probably affecting my health in a lot of ways. So that's something we're working on. But you're definitely right with casting. There are a lot of chemicals. There are things that you definitely have to have ventilation or you're going to be in trouble. Maybe like once or twice if it was like a special occasion and wasn't something you were going to do a lot of, you could probably get away with it without it being that big of a deal. But like repeated exposure to those fumes in an enclosed space, like you're going to kill some brain cells. So I definitely can't recommend any of that. You'd have to have a ventilation system in place. And hopefully my new one will be hopefully better than the one I have now because the one I have now is definitely not cutting it. But it's very important. I'm sure there is some better science. I need to do a little more research and get on top of that for the next one. The one I use now really was not supposed to be a permanent thing. I've been living here way longer than I was supposed to be living here and using the studio way longer than I was supposed to be using it for. So we were really not, we didn't set up the most serious ventilation system. There should have been a little more serious one put in place that would have helped keep my brain safe. But here we are. Better luck next time, you know what I mean? But we're working on it. There are like things moving behind me and I don't know what they are. It's freaking me out a little bit. All right. I don't know how many fingers this guy's gonna have, but I'm not gonna deal with it quite. Oops, I'm out of frame. There we go. I don't think I'm gonna deal with it quite yet because it's a little early for that. I'm gonna leave his hands and feet kind of raw because, like I was saying before, I want to make sure I have everything about him in position first. Oops. I feel like I need to give him a longer nose. Oops. He looks like a dinosaur. Whoa, very long nose. There we go. I'm into that. I like a very prominent overbite. We go very prominent overbite. I feel like with my dragons drawings, I tend to draw a lot of inspiration from crocodiles and they're like janky teeth. Not that they have janky teeth. They have lovely teeth. They're lovely creatures. Don't think I'm making fun of crocodiles. They're great. I love them. my favorite creatures to visit at the zoo, to be honest. They always fascinate me. I was fascinated by giant reptiles, obviously. It does have dodo bird vibes. That you're not wrong about that. Maybe that is also something I am doing subconsciously because the other day I was actually thinking about sculpting a 3D dodo bird, and I think that would be actually kind of an awesome little sculpture. So thank you for reminding me of that because I forgot all about it. I think I was like kind of half asleep when I had that thought. But yeah, dodo birds. I've been giving a lot of thought to dodo birds lately, like feeling sad about them. Um, you know, poor little guys. The fact that we never got to actually like experience them, like gone long before we ever existed. I mean, not us, me specifically. Humans obviously coexisted with dodo birds, and they are the reason that they are gone because humans are the worst. But yeah, they've been gone a very long time. But they do have kind of a cute like silly face. You know? I think they have cute silly faces. Alright, so the question here with this guy is, I guess we gotta give him some like a jaw area here. Maybe some ears. His jaw's kind of small here on this side. Oops. He doesn't seem to have a lower jaw, so I'm gonna give him a lower jaw. Jam that in there. Really glad I figured out how to flip my camera because like for a while my live streams were all upside down. Not smart. Okay, figured it out. There we go. I think this guy we're gonna I'm gonna try to make him angular in every way. He's just gonna have a lot of crookedness. Just character. And it looks like he's got some personality. Let me come back to his silly face here in a minute. I think I need to get some of this. I'm gonna give him kind of like make his nose sort of look like it's kind of beak-like you said. He's got kind of a dodo bird kind of a face. We're gonna play into that a little bit. Does all of my fine detailing have to be done in the sculpt? It doesn't have to be, but it's easier that way. I mean, it depends on what if you mean like this for this part of the sculpt. No, I can actually mold this, and then after I pull a reproduction from the mold, then that reproduction in wax, I could add a bunch of detail into that before casting if I wanted to. But if the idea is to make duplicates, if I want to make 5 of this guy and I don't want to sculpt him 5 times, the idea is to get as much detail in this version as possible. But if there are details that won't translate well in a mold, those are better left to being done right before casting. So those would be something you leave out and then add them in one at a time, which I do that for a lot of my jewelry, and it makes for things being more unique, obviously. Every time you make something out of a mold, it's never going to actually be identical. The molds really are mainly for like overall shape and the majority of the detail, but detail is always lost using a mold. So no matter what you do, if you're making something with a mold, they're never perfect reproductions, at least the way I do it, because I'm not making industrial molds. I'm making them in my home with my hands and with the tools that I have available to me. So obviously bigger companies or manufacturers that make like super high-tech molds, they probably could get every little tiny detail. I don't have the ability to do that. I'm just doing it the old school way. And the old school way definitely has issues. There are issues. But it's just part of the process. Retouching up molds or losing some detail here and there. Totally normal part of the mold process. I think a lot of people go in trying to make molds and then get discouraged that they're not flawless copies, but that's part of being an artist is you can't really do that. That's not that's not really an option. You're gonna have to always touch up those castings before they go to be cast. And even some type of detail, like to go back to your question, um, some details actually are better to put in metal if you can get a better finish or a certain technique that creates a certain finish that you want. That's easier to do on metal than on clay because some of those do exist. I am not great with that, so I don't do a lot of it, but a lot of people do that. Am I going to show the whole process of making a metal dino? Metal dino. What are we talking about? What metal dino are we talking about? The dodo bird? Or are you talking about this guy? This guy's gonna be a dragon, but I know he's pretty close to a dino, looking like a dino. Unless you're talking about something else. I don't typically show, I mean, I show as much of my process as I possibly can, but a lot of it, since I'm by myself, working by myself, a lot of it is just simply not safe to film. And people will be like, oh, put it on a tripod. It doesn't matter. If I know I'm being filmed, I'm not in the moment and I'm distracted. Even if it's a very small degree of distraction, it's still a distraction. And casting is way too dangerous to be distracted. So I show as much of the process as I can safely show. Most of the time, I have a lot of videos already up of me doing everything but the casting pretty much. And actually, I think there is a video of me doing the casting, which I did film from a safe distance once. It's just really not exciting because my current setup, the only way to film me casting is from behind me and you just see my back, or from the side and you can't really see the metal going into the molds. It's not like particularly exciting. So I'm hoping in my new studio I will have the ability to make a better visual for people, so that I can set up a tripod and try to ignore it and maybe safely make a film of my casting process. But so far I have tons of videos of my process from sculpting to finished, mostly on my Instagram. I don't know if there's any on my YouTube page, longer form videos. I think there are longer form videos of me making molds. I've made a lot of videos of that. But the actual casting, not a ton of that, just because it's really dangerous to film. But yeah. Let's see. We're getting a little more dragony. What has been my most popular piece of jewelry? Good question. Most popular, probably from way back. I used to make a lot of worry stones. I've probably sold the most of those of anything that I've made. Between the rings, I make worry stone rings and a variety of sizes of worry stone necklaces. I've sold a ton of those, but they're not very sculptural. They're kind of boring. So that's kind of a bummer that that's one of my most popular things because it's not one of my fun designs. Like it's one of the most boring things that I have ever made. But I think that speaks a lot to just humans in general. Like there are a lot more boring people in the world than like boring things. So I do need to pay my bills, so I thank those boring people for buying worry stones. And there's also a lot of people with anxiety like through the roof. So I think that's probably the main reason that those designs are so popular. They are very pretty. I'll give them that. They're very shiny and like, textile. That's the whole idea. So I think people like shiny stuff, of course. As a jeweler, I can tell you, people love shiny stuff. Second to those, I would say, um, my book ring is probably my second most popular. It's just like a teeny tiny little tiny book on top of a ring. It's very cute. That's another very popular design that I've made um, probably a couple hundred times over the course of my career, which doesn't sound like that many, but when you're hand making everything, that's a lot. Um, yeah, worry stones are just that's a cultural thing. They're like kind of like a good sort of like a good luck charm, but it's more an anxiety thing. People traditionally they're made of stone. That's why they're called worry stones, and it's just a stone with a concave space in it that is really satisfying to like rub with your finger when you're experiencing stress. So it's a very basic shape. Um, there weren't a lot of them out in the world in anything but stone because they're traditionally made of stone. So maybe that's another reason that I have done well selling them is because I was like, hey, these could be made out of metal. And then they'd be stronger, more sturdy than stone. You can't drop them and break them like a regular stone. But they do, I have seen them throughout lots of cultures in different types of stone, like tiger's eye and um, that sort of thing. People who are into specific types of stone could tell you the reason behind that. I don't actually know, to be honest. Alright, it's got arms and legs. Fingers, we'll work on that. I think I need to make his head and neck a better shape here. I think I want to bring his head in a little. More rounded at the back. Oops. You can see this clay has gotten very, very hard over the course of me working for the last hour. It went from smushy to you can tap on it. It left little marks, obviously, where I tapped on it, but isn't that rad? It's so hard. I love it. The stuff over here is still a little bit pliable because it's kind of retaining its heat. but not very pliable, I have to say. And add a little tiny bit more to his butt before it gets so hard I can't bend it anymore, because I feel like the shape of his tail is a little bit weird. So we're going to do that. That's a little bit better. But I want there to be pushing this direction because I want the curve of his spine to follow his tail. I hear a cat crying. Why is there a cat crying? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. My cat likes to just sit and scream for sometimes for no reason. It's his favorite thing. Alright, going up his spine here. Okay. Oh, I hope you guys are having a good day, all of you who are watching. I hope you had a relaxing weekend. Mine was so-so, I would say. I'm trying really hard not to watch too much news, but it's impossible. It's everywhere. Also trying to stay off of social media, which again, impossible when I'm trying to run a business and like make money and survive. What a bummer. What a bummer. I really wish I didn't have to be on social media. As much as it is fun to like hang out with you guys and talk to you and like, you know, I've made a bunch of friends over there. The people who aren't friendly, oof, brutal. Absolutely brutal. Truly, it is rough. You found me on Instagram. That's that's where a lot of people have come from. Welcome. Instagram it's been hard lately on Instagram to be seen by followers. I feel like a lot of people started following me on Instagram years ago when I started posting about sculpting, and I was really optimistic that I was going to be able to do more sculpting and make a living out of it, and then um, the algorithms had different plans for me. they um, they kind of just switched up everything on Instagram, and it stopped being easy to find people. It was, I was just screaming into the void. I've been screaming into the void now for, a couple of years, at least 6 months of void screaming. So I'm getting kind of sick of it because a lot of people started following me so that they could see what I was working on, but then I can't actually get any of my work in front of them. So I've been trying to just, see what happens and stay positive. I don't want it to kill my vibe that my audience, I'm invisible to my audience. You were looking for jewelry, clothes, and tats. I don't have clothes or tats, but I mean, I'm wearing clothes. I don't sell clothes, though I used to actually. But jewelry I have. I can help you with that. But I actually post more about my jewelry on Facebook than I do anywhere else. At this point, but oh, my arm is tight. I'm gonna stretch. Um, but yeah, I used to post way, way more on Instagram about jewelry. I am trying to do better about um, filming my process, more of my sculpting process. Like, most of the time, I don't want to be bothered with a camera in my face while I'm sculpting because sculpting is supposed to be fun. The reason I do it is for enjoyment more than anything else. So it's like I'm trying to not kill my own vibe, not trying to kill my own buzz by having a camera in my face all the time. You know what I mean? But that's what people want to see, so I guess I have to do more of it. I'm trying. I'm trying to keep up with it, but I'm also trying to respect my own mental health, which a lot of creators have a hard time with because, you know, these days, the demands that are put on your time are always too much, especially for an artist. It's like, I need time to decompress and to be creative, and those things are difficult to come by when you have like bills and alerts and things always just blaring in your face and you know. A lot of them are not very responsive. Um yeah, I mean, I think you honestly you probably caught me on a good day. There's a lot of times that I mean to answer when somebody messages me, but like I was just saying, like the demands of the internet are crazy. Especially when you have a little bit larger following, the amount of messages that you get is like wacky. And there are a lot of times I read a message, and if someone's asking me a question or um, commenting on something, I will read it, and then I go to answer it in my mind, and I'm doing something else or I have something I'm supposed to be finishing up, and I tell myself I'll get back to this, and then I totally forget and never ever go back and never answer that person's question. So I think I'm sure that happens all the time. So for future reference, like, you know, not everyone is intentionally be like ignoring people. I probably have ignored dozens of people. Um, well, I'm glad you appreciate my responsiveness. I do it because I want to help people that, especially if you're friendly. I think that's honestly that's the main thing for me. If someone just like blurts a question at me and kind of out of nowhere, it feels a little disrespectful of my time. But if you're kind and curious, I have no problem answering questions for people who are curious and kind. Those are my main um, qualifications. I think a lot of people are curious because what I do is not very self-explanatory, and I'm sure there's a lot of times where you're like looking at something I'm doing and going, "What on earth?" and you're curious and maybe want to try it yourself, but you don't know where to start. So I get that. Um, I've put myself in a position to be asked a lot of questions, and that's fine. I like that. I'm into that for sure. But as long as people are friendly, I've had people be very not friendly in my DMs, and that has definitely caused me to spend less time answering DMs. I used to try to answer everybody, and now it's kind of like whenever I have the energy, I'll do it when I have the energy, but I don't have a lot of energy these days, not gonna lie. Getting tired. Getting really tired. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Oh, I'm also getting very stiff. I sit at my desk way too much. But my little dragon dude was kind of coming along fun. I think I still need to slim him down a little bit. He's got a chunkier neck than I want. I want him to be gangly. Oops. And keep trimming until he's where I want him to be. Hopefully I don't tap into that foil armature. This is what I was telling you about when I first started. When you're cutting away and cutting away, you gotta hope you don't like hit metal. Is the tiredness work burnout? Yes, I would say that and some other things. I've got a lot of life things currently kicking my ass. So the combo of that and work this year in general has been really hard. I've have to work twice as hard to make the same amount of money as last year, and I was working hard last year to make it work. So this year now having to like really double down has been brutal. I'm definitely feeling burnout in a way I have never before. I definitely like have been lucky that running my own business has been relatively smooth for the first 10 years. Um, Surprisingly, I guess I must have got lucky with the markets, things, handmade things were really starting to blow up right when I was starting to handmade jewelry. And I found not a big client base, but a pretty good sized client base of people who still to this day come back to me regularly, thank God. And they're all so nice and always give me like great ideas, and we bounce ideas off of each other, and I make the stuff that they want to see me make, and it's like struck the perfect balance. But um, it has been hard this year trying to keep up with the demands of life. Like the expense of living currently is just astronomical. Um, my electric bills have gone through the roof, with really no potential for going back down. And I think that's one of the most stressful things I've currently got going on is energy crisis. We're all kind of experiencing that, but I'm not sure if because I'm in New York, those prices are higher. They sure as hell feel like they are. I don't know what the solution is for stuff like that. I just have to, you know, I'm just having to work harder to keep up, and it's hard. Um, I would not consider relocating because we are trying to move. We're trying to build our home, our forever home, on my family's property. My family has owned a beautiful piece of land, and it has always been my dream to live there. So that is really that is one of the other stressors we're currently experiencing. Is building a home is almost impossible and extremely expensive and a ton of red tape. If that falls through, then yes, I would consider relocating outside of New York, um, because I will have given up on my dreams. If we have been deterred now for 2 years, um, and it is all becoming increasingly more stressful. The bureaucracy involved at the town and state levels are really, 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 really daunting. And I just want to live in peace and then have a little tiny studio where I can make sculptures. Um, yeah, it's one of those goals um, that I'm not willing to give up on quite yet. I know the cost of living going sky high this year, and probably never going to come down, is very stressful. That's why we're really not in a good position to build, but like if we don't do it now, it may never happen. And um, the land is so lovely, and it's such a peaceful, beautiful place, and it would like make all my dreams come true. So we're trying our very, very, very best, but um, every time we blink, the price goes up, and um, my income sure as hell is not going up every time I blink. So that kind of constant like push and pull, like, am I gonna be too poor for this, or is this a terrible idea? It weighs on me every waking second. But we're working on it. We're seeing how it goes, praying, you know. But I think it'll be okay. And if it does work out, which I'm praying that it does, I'll be in a much better position to make to make way more art, and that would be the dream. I want to make sculptures that are life size. I need a studio for that, unfortunately. I need a much, 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 much bigger studio for that. I don't have access to a much, much bigger studio, but maybe I will build one someday. We'll see. Kind of keeping on right now and praying that everything, that some kind of sense of normalcy returns to the world. And in the meantime, I'm just going to make cool stuff and hope that the right people find me and continue to support me, and hopefully I can make these cool little sculptures and like stuff like this that people will buy and put in their homes, and we'll make it work. Just one day at a time, you know? That's how we're all surviving. Life size would not be silver. That is correct. It would be bronze. Um, life size silver things would be awesome. But really, 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 really expensive. Crazy expensive. Bronze is the goal. Big life size bronze things. Like for example, I would love to make like a Sasquatch that oops, I just took that spot down. I'd like to make a Sasquatch that lurks in the forest of my, at the edge of my property. That would be so fantastic. Um, he'd have to be 7 feet tall roughly. And I think there is a great possibility that I can do that at some point. All right, this guy needs to put some flat. We're gonna give him kind of like a, I don't know what the word is here. Not dumb. I don't want to use the word dumb. But like a kind of a dumb face. I want to give him like Neanderthal-y kind of like eye, not wells. What are they called? Eyebrows. It's getting really dark in here. I just realized. I'm losing my light. Have I already done bronze? Oh yeah, I do lots of bronze. I make small bronzes, like things like this, out of bronze. And in college, I made huge bronzes. I sculpted a 6 foot tall man and cast him in bronze in college. And it was like the most fun ever. And that's one of the reasons I want to do it again, is because I like got really hooked on it in college. So that is actively one of my goals, to cast bronze again, big bronze. All right. All right, let's see. What do I want to do for this guy's like? Yeah, you know what? I feel like I need to move. I don't like this. I'm gonna move this. This is one of those things when I say that I like change my mind a million times. I'm gonna make his head smaller. Then can go in a little bit with this. I kind of wanted a little bit of an S curve with his neck. So that's what I'm gonna do here. Bring it in a little more. Oops. Okay, so on this side, I need to cut it down because it's too big. these numbers. And then move the eye on this side. Oops, there goes my foil. Alright. I guess we can look at it from this side. This angle, he's got. Move his head back this way. I'm gonna redraw his mouth probably 6 more times, but throw it out there for now. I'll add a little. I always add a little more like lip overhangs and such, but I do that later because they tend to get all smushed while I'm actively holding a sculpture and working on it. I feel like this guy needs to turn his head a little bit. Maybe cock his head to the side a little. He's got some character. I want him to sit like a little, like he's intrigued. We're gonna tilt his head, show him some. He's got a little inquisitive kind of look about him. Like, hey, what are you up to? What's up? Okay. Maybe a little chunk. Wax. Forgot all about my tea. It is ice cold now. Ice cold. But that's fine. Not a big deal. Not a big deal. I give him bigger eyebrows because I said so. How's that? We're gonna get him a little more dinosaur-like right now with these. Always try to make sure that from above, they're doing the same thing. Because later, you sculpt too much stuff, you sculpt an eyeball in, and you look at it from a different angle and you go, oh no, what have I done here? This is wrong. So, from the top, we're mostly going for symmetry. Is it that important? Not really. Especially like a little wonky guy like this who's got a little bit of intentional crookedness. It's not super duper important, but I like to try. I like to try. Yeah, I'm gonna tell myself. Give it the old college try. Leaving a little swirly kind of texture at the top here because I think I'm gonna do something with that later, but not right now. You know what I'm saying? So in the meantime, where an eye will be. So we'll just rough it in so we have an idea. I'm not going to get too particular about it because the angle of the eye is probably going to change. Maybe even the location of the eye, depending on how big I want his head to be. Like originally his eyes were like back here. But we have since changed that. Normally they're pretty deep though, so we're gonna assume deep eye wells. This one is bigger on the other side. I'll try to do something like that for now. Who knows where we're gonna go with this. Part of me kind of wants to make him like a sitting dog. He's just like, sit. Yes, definitely dodo vibe with the head, shape of the head. Gotta do a little more trimming. A little more. A little more in here to kind of connect his beak to his face. Oh boy, it's already 5:30. All right. So I'm gonna start winding down what I'm working on here. Or I gotta start focusing and get it really tune in to what I'm really trying to do here. I feel like he's definitely taking on more dino characteristics as I go here. Kind of a T-Rexy overbite. Add some of the same. This side. Stab myself in the face with my tools. It's always fun. I always enjoy giving a little angular shape to the nose. Even sometimes the nostrils, kind of pull them down that direction. Clean them up. Reminds me of a movie that I'm guessing there's no way anyone's gonna know what the hell I'm talking about, but I'm gonna reference it anyways. A movie called We're Back that was like a cartoon movie about dinosaurs. If you know what I'm talking about, feel free to chime in. There was like one big main dino that had a similar face to this guy. I feel like. I don't remember his name. It was a movie I used to watch like all the time when I was a child. I remember my sisters like hated it, and they were like, "Oh, this movie's terrible," and I was like, "This movie's great." I feel like there was like a circus. There was some like scary circus scene. I'm not super sure like who produced this movie, but um, anyways, it was one of those. Saw it long. You did see it. Interesting. The Screw Eye. That sounds super familiar. I can't believe you've seen that movie because I feel like it was so obscure. Um, it was like it had to be like a mid '90s like off-brand. It wasn't Disney. It wasn't Warner Brothers. I don't think. Um, the Circus Master with I think you're right. That sounds correct. I remember the circus scene being like really creepy. As a kid, I like thought it was the scariest thing. I was like, why am I watching this? But then I kept watching it, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, for some reason, sculpting this guy's face reminded me of that dinosaur for some reason. The shape of his nose or something. I don't know. That was weird. That was a weird movie. I'm honestly impressed that you know what I'm talking about. I thought that one was gonna be a little too out of left field. I'm gonna have to dig that up and see if I can find that movie somewhere and watch it because I feel like it definitely shaped my like sort of obsession with dinosaurs moving into adulthood. But I don't know why like no one else in my family liked it. Just me. All right. All right, for now, I feel like his expression is not what I want. What was one of the movies your very religious grandma ironically had? Interesting. That is ironic. Um, unless of course grandma thought dinosaurs were like a thing of the imagination and therefore acceptable for children. Um, talking dinosaurs obviously are an imaginative take on an evolution, I guess. Um, that is kind of funny. My family was not religious, thank God. Ironically, thank God. But we definitely had like, you know, my family tried to only buy like kid like the most kid appropriate things for us to watch. I didn't see a rated R movie until I was like legitimately old enough, which is crazy. I'm not sure how many people can say that. They were like that sheltered. Which I guess I turned out okay. Why did I want to make his eyes bigger, like more lizard like? Kind of flat and large. I'm gonna go that route. I feel like I usually make my dragon's eyes very squinty, not squinty, but like, I don't know. I don't know what the right word is for that. Give him a little. I feel like I just said I wasn't gonna do this, and then here I am, getting way too into it. But again, in my description of this video, I said I was gonna go where the wind took me today. Because this whole experience is for the mental health purposes. It's not, I don't have any actual goals here other than like stress relief. You know what I mean? Got a lot of clay on my lap, which is going to be a problem when I do laundry. Well. Oh. How do I decide when I'm finished? That is also a great question. And I hear the voice of my past professor in my head going, "Stop it." I too am like, I will tweak something to absolute death. But now I try to like listen to like that internal, like an internal voice that is not even my own and just is like, stop, it's done. But when it's stuff like this, that like the level of detail, I can go on and on and on. You know what I mean? It's hard. I have a lot of projects sitting around that are half finished because I just think there's more that can be done. There's always more that can be done. But I'm gonna try really hard. I would say in the next, as I move into more sculptural stuff, I'm gonna try to not beat a dead horse when it comes to over detailing stuff, because I think a lot of my more fun projects have a little more of a human touch to them anyways. I think especially with bronze, like you want to see texture, like with this piece you can see a ton of cuts and little movements and even some fingerprints and stuff like that. And I think, I don't know, I think moving forward, that's just what the world is going to respond better to anyways. I feel like that super, super polished look is, I mean, nowadays it's hard. It's hard with all the AI shit, honestly, to tell if somebody made a thing. I always feel like I want to see imperfections. I want to see process involved. I don't want something that is like perfectly flawless. So I think I've been moving towards that in my own work. That I want the inspiration and the feeling to be visible. And if I continue to work on something long past a point where I'm happy with it, I think if anything, I start to lose that feeling of, you know, of loving the piece itself and having the emotion be visible in it. The more you mess with it, sometimes, I mean, I'm definitely have messed with things to a point where I like won't touch them ever again. So, like have ruined them and then won't go back to fix them is more what I mean. So, I'm trying to avoid that. And also just kind of like going with feelings. It's been working okay so far, I think. That is my long-winded answer to that question. All right. So, I think what my issue here is the angle of this guy's head. I wanted it back like that. It's really hard to push because of the foil that's on the inside, but let's give it one more heave ho. I think I wanted more of a slouch. So if I can slouch this down, you're probably like, what is she doing? It is moving, I know it doesn't look like it is, but it is. We're pushing this down. Okay. A little more of a slouch. And then this part, dip. I want that to dip a little more. And then we're going to tilt his whole head that way a little bit. A little bit more. Give his whole neck like a little bend. I want from this angle him to be like a, I don't know, like a little creature that you stumble upon in the forest and you're like, hey there, little guy, are you dangerous? And it's looking at you like, maybe. That's the vibe we're going for. I like that vibe. I like the Are You Dangerous vibe. It's one of my favorites. Oops, we hit foil, so I can't take any more off of here. My own armature has forced my hand. But I think we can take a little bit from down here to slim him down a little bit. Because I wanted his neck to be skinnier than it currently is. I'm also going to probably slim his whole body down a bit. I'm sort of picturing one of those dragons that's like almost worm-like in the body language. Side tongue. He does look like goofy enough to have like his tongue sticking out of his mouth. When I get closer to the details on him, we'll get more of a like picture of his personality. If he seems like one of those, he's just a little harmless goofball. Maybe I'll trial out the tongue. I think that would be cute. Almost like that makes me think of the dog from, like I was saying earlier, I watched Mulan like sort of recently. The dog in the beginning where she just ties the thing to his head, the bone in front of him, and he just runs around feeding the chickens. It sort of gives those kind of vibes. You know what I mean? All right. I'm just giving myself an idea, and I'm going with it. I'm gonna put the shape of scales right into the back. We've got kind of I'm gonna taper him in, obviously, but instead of adding scales in by physically sticking them onto his back, I'm going to carve them in. Because it doubles the slimming of his body. It's a two bird, one stone situation because he needed scales, spikes down his back. Anyways, I wonder if I'm out of focus. Beep, beep. Here we go. Uh-oh, it's almost 6 o'clock. I did tell my husband that 6 o'clock was taco time, so soon I'm going to have to wrap it up here. The dog is only in the movie briefly. Back to Mulan. The dog is really in that like one scene, and that's pretty much it. I think his name is Little Brother. I think she yells Little Brother to him. I actually briefly considered naming my own dog Little Brother when I adopted him not because he's adult like that dog, though he's a bit dense, um, but he's like a huge dog and he's the little brother to our two cats who are obviously older than him, and I think that's funny because he's enormous and he's the little brother. I can't renege on taco time, you're right. I did actually, amazingly enough, prep the taco meat so that it would be like ready to cook. Because he had to work today. So he just got home and now he's making beans and rice and stuff, I think. Um, but like truly impressive on my part that I actually did that I had the time to do that because I am notorious for forgetting to do stuff like that. Even though I say I'm going to do it, and then I'm like, oh, oopsie days, I don't have time. Where has the time gone? But today I was on top of it. I did it. I walked the dog before it started raining. Yeah, prepped the taco meat. I mean, come on. Sculpted almost an entire dragon, though he doesn't have needs like ears and wings and stuff. I also like changed the settings on my camera and it doesn't autofocus, so that's incredibly annoying. Hopefully it hasn't been too big of a problem here during this live stream. We'll never know. Because am I going to go back and review the video quality of this? Obviously not. Of course not. Alright. Well, we gave him some little spikies down his back, which I think actually are really adorable. Gives him much more of a dragony feel. He doesn't look like an otter. In the beginning, he looked like an otter. But I think this is going to be this week's stress relief project. Anytime I'm like feeling like I'm having a panic attack, I'm going to be like, I'm going to go work on my little dragon dude. Or maybe I'll sketch and try to figure out what to do with his head. Because he needs like ears or horns or like something back here. Excuse me. And I don't know what to put here. I also didn't even touch his tail today. Like it just looks like a Tootsie Roll. It looks like a hilarious Tootsie Roll. I didn't do a single thing to his tail. It's fine though. He actually is in a very similar position to another little dude I cast. I didn't cast, I mean, I sculpted a couple weeks ago. Like almost exactly the same position now that I think about it with his little arms, but whatever. I was moving in the direction of like easy to mold, trying to keep things easy for myself. I want to make him easy to mold and adorable to look at. Those are the main things we got going on here. I'm going to have to do a lot more detail-y stuff, but I think we're nearing a good stopping point. He's got little spiky spikes now. Keep uncovering that piece of foil and taking me off. Looks like I could just push it in. I did just push it in a little bit, so maybe I fixed the problem. I'll have to remember that there's foil in here for later, because that's going to be important. It's going to be important later when I go to mold this. Sometimes I cut these things into pieces to mold them, and like, if there's a piece of foil in the middle, not going to happen. That will be a problem. Just doing a tiny bit more shaving of his sides because it just dawned on me that like a couple days when I go back to work on this, it is going to be so rock hard that I won't be able to carve into it because it gets just harder and harder and harder and harder all the time. And I won't really be able to warm him up effectively. So I'm going to take this opportunity to get the meat, most of the meat that I want gone out of here. Gotta look at him from the side and make sure his shape is what I want. Little legs come down like this. All right. I almost want this part of him to be rounder. So I may need to put his tail underneath him. Not sure how I'm going to pull that off, but I don't know. If you were a dragon and your tail is underneath you, I mean, I guess it needs to start further down. Maybe that's the problem. Don't mind me just talking myself through what I'm thinking out loud. Is it necessary? No, but the silence is deafening in here, so that's what's going on. Deafening silence. I am getting a bit of a headache, probably because I'm hungry. Now I'm daydreaming about tacos. The tacos that are in my immediate future. It's gonna be awesome. Okay. Thanks for coming. I'm glad it was enjoyable and relaxing. That was the goal. I had a good time too. I didn't get super far today on this guy, but far enough. You can tell what he is. That's good. We'll resume next time, but I will take your cue and take that as the sign it is time for me to go help my husband make tacos. But again, thank you for coming. For anybody else watching, I will post updates as I get further along with this guy. I'm done for tonight though because I've been streaming now for 2 hours. So, with that said, enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. Bye. It's been real. Go sculpt a dinosaur. I mean, a dragon. It's very relaxing. Okay, bye.